Would it surprise you to learn that used car sales in Canada accounted for 57% of the total cars sold in 2022, and that number percentage increased to 60% in 2023? This rising trend points to the fact that Canadian consumers are looking increasingly at pre-owned or used cars as affordable alternatives to more expensive new vehicles. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of EV Society's Canada Talks Electric Cars. Since the majority of car buyers are shopping the pre-owned market these days, these sales clearly play an important role in the transition to sustainable transportation. In fact, the market size of the used car dealer industry, that being not the private car sales, but from the industry itself, in Canada, as measured in revenue, was $16.8 billion in 2023. Today, we've invited a panel of three terrific guests to join us. Each of them runs a dealership specializing in the used electric vehicle space. But before we bring them on, let's just do a brief online poll about today's subject to learn a little bit about your preferences for acquiring vehicles. And we're pretty good. We're up to 82%. Let's call that, I think that's probably a pretty good representation of the room. So I'm going to end the poll and turn it around so you can all see what came of it. So, is your daily driver a BEV, hybrid, or ICE? 74%, not surprisingly given the audience that we have for this webinar. 74% it's a BEV, full battery electric. 7% are driving hybrids, much less than I would have thought. And 20%, 19% driving combustion. That's pretty cool. Next question, do you prefer to shop for used, new, or leased vehicles? And here we have 60, well, this defies the national statistics, but 66% shop new, 41% prefer to buy used vehicles, and 3% lease their cars. And in terms of the current vehicle that you own, your daily driver, 66% purchased it new, 32% bought it used, 1% are leasing, and 1% got it as a gift from their best friend. So that's pretty cool. All right, so an interesting mix, a little bit skewed relative to the used car, away from the used car market, but still very interesting. And I do appreciate very much everybody participating. It's interesting to know where people are coming from when we do one of these webinars. So at this point, I will mention one little housekeeping issue. I'll remind everyone that you're welcome to enter questions in the Zoom Q&A down on the bar there at any time. But if you prefer to ask a question using your microphone, we will unmute your mic if we see you raise your hand. So raise your virtual hand and we'll let you jump in with a question. But otherwise, please do put them in at any time in the Q&A button. So at this point, I'm going to ask our panels to join us with their microphones and cameras turned on. And I'll be introducing Daryl, Bruce, and Julian. So guys, if you would, turn on your cameras. Wow. So many good-looking people at once. It's hard to imagine. Welcome, guys. This is awesome. Again, it's Daryl Croft with Electric Vehicle Network, Bruce Wu from Carnex, and Julian Sale at Motorize. Those are our wonderful panelists today, and we really do appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise with the audience. I'm going to just start off by asking each of you please to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business and a little bit about the model of it. So I'm going to go on my screen in no particular order, but Julian, would you mind starting us off?
Shucks, thanks, Tim. Hey, my name's Julian Sale. I was cutting my teeth in the two-wheeled industry before I made my way to the four-wheeled industry. And back in, I guess, 2010, I thought there was going to be an electric future. So I incorporated Motorize Auto Direct, and we started selling hybrids and EVs. And we gradually grew towards more and more EVs, stopped selling hybrids and gas cars altogether in 2016, and have just been pure EV ever since.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks very much. Very
Thank
much.
you.
Daryl, you're next up on my screen.
Great. Yeah, my background was a little different. I've always been in the automotive service business through generations, I got to say, in my family. We are part of the OK Tire and Auto Network, and I served as chairman of that group for a dozen years. And during that time, EVs emerged. When I looked closely at what was coming at it for all our dealers, I felt the same as Julian. EVs are going to be the way to go. I came at it from the service point of view first, but realizing thanks to EV Society and others that there was a problem getting good information and dedication to EVs. People didn't want to sell them. We set up Electric Vehicle Network to just focus on helping our millions of clients go to electric. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Awesome. Thanks, Daryl. Hey, Bruce, you're up.
Hi, I'm Bruce. I'm the founder and CEO of the CarNex. I used to running an auto collision center and auto parts distributor. At CarNex, we're currently focusing on making it easy for people buy and sell electric vehicles. We started CarNex like 3 years ago, and we have been sold over thousands of Teslas. We majorly focus on user Teslas.
All right, excellent. And I'll do one shout out for Bruce. He gets the award for being the furthest person away. He's currently sitting in China. He's and has just finished his breakfast, so we appreciate the long distance. I don't think we're going to get anybody further away unless Elon gets somebody on Mars. So thanks very much again, all of you, really, for doing this. I'm going to start off with, and I'll mention too that we have behind the scenes here Jason Arnaud. Jason is going to be monitoring the Q&A, and I see a hand or two raised up, but when we get a little bit further in, he'll either be asking us questions from Q&A, or he'll let the person become unmuted and ask their question live with the mic. So I'm going to ask one question, which I I don't know if it's so much for this audience, but certainly anyone watching the recording. For a lot of people, the elephant in the room here is that some people are already nervous about the idea of going to a full battery electric car. So the notion of buying a used battery electric car has got to be pretty frightening for some people. Let me ask you, should they be worried about? Is there any big concern about that? Let's just get that out there now. And I'm going to go backwards now and start with Bruce. Should people be concerned about buying a used electric vehicle?
Yeah, I know. I know there's so much people getting nervous if they want to buy a pre-owned EVs because they're probably concerned about the battery or other parts breaking down and higher repair cost. But the truth is today's electric vehicles, batteries and overall the durabilities are pretty solid. So, and the warranty is pretty good compared to ICE vehicle. So, and so far it's rare to see major failures for the electric vehicles. So especially like Tesla. So I don't think the people who are supposed to or they need to nervous or worry about buying EV or buying a user EV.
Excellent. Okay. Any thoughts to add to that, Daryl? You kind of agree with that summation?
Oh, yeah. Well, thinking of the years I spent in the internal combustion world, if it's a choice between buying used internal combustion or electric, to me, it's a much easier decision, electric. The internal combustion has so many components that are failing, well documented, engines, transmissions, exhaust, which are very expensive. So there's so many less parts that go wrong with electric. And I do agree with Bruce's points that the warranty on EVs is really good. So you don't have that risk in most cases. So that's really the better of two choices.
Yeah, great. Anything to add, Julian?
You know, I did an experiment a little while ago and I bought the most hammered ex-Uber super duper high mileage Tesla Model 3s I could find. And I wanted to know what goes wrong with the vehicle when it's been supercharged 3 times a day and racks up 300,000 K in 3 years. And I couldn't find many problems apart from things like door check straps, seatbelt latches that were worn out, like super basic, cheap stuff. And I have to say, if I'm maintaining a fleet of vehicles, I'd rather maintain a fleet of electrics than a fleet of internal combustion.
Yeah.
Much less of many fewer problems.
Yeah, you know, you're all in agreement, and it's not too surprising that this is kind of the response I'm getting to the question. But I hope that we can help convince people that this is the case, and that just because it's an EV and it's been pre-owned, if anything, it's still still a stronger argument for purchasing. They're good cars. They're good cars. But if I was in that position and I was out shopping for a previously owned EV, one of the biggest concerns I would have would be the biggest ticket item in that vehicle, which is the battery. And you know, is the battery healthy, or what's the condition of the battery? And Julian, you're the last to talk. What can people do, or what do you suggest that people do to confirm that the battery's okay?
Well, if it's okay, so it depends on the brand of the vehicle ultimately. If it's still under warranty, then you really have nothing to worry about, because if anything does go sideways with the battery within that 160, 180, 192,000 K warranty, then the manufacturer is going to stand behind it. So you don't need to sweat it until you're at the end of the warranty. But usually problems with batteries would show up pretty early. But if there is a problem, but we're not really seeing a whole lot of battery issues. It stands to reason, though, that there's a vast cost difference in battery replacements depending on what brand you're talking about. So I'm just going to throw a funny question out there. Does anybody know how much a replacement used battery costs for a Model 3 or a Model Y?
I know what the answer is, because nobody knows.
I know what the answer is.
Nobody knows.
Well, okay, so when I bought this ultra high mileage, really rough Model 3, I thought, hey, worst case scenario, the battery might be rough. What do we do? So I called an auto wrecker in Vancouver, and you can get a replacement battery for, I'm going to say, comfortably less than $5,000 for a standard range, and comfortably less than $6,000 for a long range. So at that point, do we care about battery health anymore?
Right. Well, excellent. Excellent. My answer would have been, we don't know, because they probably, you know, they're still under warranty.
Well, the cars get wiped out. See, that's the thing. And then they go to the dismantlers, and the dismantlers have to recycle everything that they can't sell. And when they have a whole bunch of something and they can't sell it, they reduce the price till it goes.
Yeah.
So Tesla batteries are cheap and plentiful.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Bruce, on that same subject, what can people do? Is there some way they can have a battery tested, and is this something else that's different depending on the model?
Yeah, for Teslas, you can test by your own. So you're going to your system. It's called service mode. You can actually test the battery health by yourself. There's a lot of the YouTube video. You guys can check it out on YouTube and test by yourself. It probably take a few hours to plug in the battery, charge the battery, and you can see the result after that. So
Awesome.
it's pretty.
Yeah. What about, is there anything, Daryl, if it's not a Tesla, that has that built-in diagnostic test? What happens?
Yeah, there are tools that we have specifically designed to test EV batteries. So they are expensive. So it's something you wouldn't buy as an individual. But if you go to a shop that is equipped, we can run those reports. I ran one this last week, actually, for a Nissan Leaf, and it shows the state of health, the state of each cell. So the tools are out there in the aftermarket, but you have to deal with somebody who knows EVs. The average shop would not have it, but you get a great report. But the OEM is also a good place to start. Now, if it's, you know, somebody may be willing to go to OEM to get a battery report, but you don't have to. The aftermarket can do it.
Yeah, yeah. OEM, original equipment manufacturer. I know somebody asked me the other day, why are people talking about OEMs? So that's just the original manufacturer. All right, so next question I have is, and this is kind of a general question, but I appreciate hearing your thoughts on it. I guess we'll go to Julian. What are the advantages of buying a used EV through a dealership such as Motorized versus, you know, a private sale?
Well, there's a few laws and regulations that uphold the customer protection. So if you're a private individual and you buy a private sale car, you have very few rights. Essentially, you get what you got, and that's what you got. But if you buy from a dealer, if you buy any automobile from any licensed dealer in this province, the dealer's obligated to follow the letter of the law with respect to vehicle condition declarations. So basically, when you buy from a dealer, you're going to get a warranty. If there's no factory warranty remaining, you'll get a dealer warranty. You'll have the option to buy extended warranty if you so choose. You'll at least know the condition of the vehicle for sure at the time that you pick it up. And hopefully buying from a dealer, you get all the information that you need so you can make a great decision without being left in the dark. So if you buy a private sale EV, it's just like buying anything else off, Facebook Marketplace. I mean, you have to hope that you trust the seller, and you have to hope the product is well defined and it is what it says it is. But from a dealer, the idea is that there's a level of professionalism that the dealer's going to treat you well and give you the best service up front, so you don't waste any time or money.
Yeah, I suppose they have a reputation. You have a reputation to protect too, because things happen word of mouth, and you don't want bad things being said. For sure. Daryl, you have anything else that comes to mind about buying through dealer?
Yeah, there's one caveat to it. I certainly agree with Julian. The same rules here in Ontario. If you mess up, you could get in a lot of trouble. There's a governing body that regulates your dealership. They can shut you down. They could fine you. You don't want that as a dealer. But what I see quite often is there's a lot of dealers who think they can just sell an EV without knowledge, and that's a mistake. You get a lot of dealers who don't know what they're getting into, and so they've been outright wrong of information they've got, and you can't do that. If you're selling as a dealer, selling the public, you have to give the right information. So we've corrected a lot of dealers that have contacted us that don't know about EVs. But my advice is to actually find a dealer that knows the product well and can give the answers. So there's so many tricks and tidbits on the vehicle, what it can do. You just miss the opportunity if you deal with somebody who doesn't understand. Like the Tesla features are unreal. When it takes a long time on your own, and if the dealer can't help you and give you all those tips out of it, you're into a bit of pain. And more importantly, I would say understanding where you're driving, because there's certain vehicles that are well suited for different applications. And if you talk to a dealer that knows the various EV options, you can avoid making a mistake. I would say 40% of the people that come to us ending up choosing a different model than they thought they wanted after they actually drove and asked questions, looked at the storage space, looked at the technology. So that's a big difference of getting the right car. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. I think Tesla is like I used to think an Excel spreadsheet. It can do so much, but there's you only usually dip into a little bit below the surface unless you know what it can do. Yeah, no, and a dealer can hopefully be helpful in that regard if they're knowledgeable. And Bruce, I don't know if they left anything for you there. I think good ground covered.
Yeah, totally agree with them. And I think so. If people go into the dedicated EV dealers, so their well-trained sales advisor can answer any questions about EVs. That's really important. So if the most of the customer, they're first time buyer, so they have a lot of questions. So they need to find out the answer. So easiest way is going to a dedicated EV dealer to find out the product and asking the question. And another thing is really important is so the dedicated EV dealer, they know the price better compared to other dealer or private. So because Tesla always change the price, or some other EV brands, they change the price often. So if you go into the dedicated EV dealer, they know the price better. So they will give you the very reasonable price at the moment. The price is a little bit chaos right now, but yeah, like I said, so if you buy into from the private, you don't even know their list price is reasonable or not. So
Right. No,
that's
that's a good point. That's a good point. And I would imagine that since EVs are relatively new to a lot of people, that their confidence level in purchasing one would probably go way up talking to a knowledgeable, credible dealer, as opposed to somebody that had an ad in the newspaper, or however they're buying it privately. So there's that as well. But all good points, guys. Really good points. I appreciate that. So how about just in general, again, what are some of the big differences between, purchasing going out to buy an EV versus going out to buy an ICE vehicle? there have to be some differences about that whole process and the thought process too. I know, Julian, do you want to kick that one off?
It's funny, I was just trying to answer a few questions here and totally missed yours.
Oh, that's okay.
I was typing some responses. Go ahead, shoot me the
Oh,
question again.
okay.
Sorry.
Well, don't use them all up because Jason will come back to those in a little
Oh
bit.
yeah, for sure.
But the question was, what are the differences between shopping for an EV versus ICE?
You know what? I think it's people when they're shopping for an ice, they feel like they're familiar, they know what's going on, and they feel like they already know everything there is to know about an ice vehicle. They only have to think about things like what safety features does it have, and how far does it go on a tank of fuel. Whereas people get into EVs and they feel like there's this cloud of uncertainty, so they have a lot more questions looking at a first EV as compared to perhaps buying an ICE car.
Mm,
So I think for a consumer, best thing to do is perhaps make a list of those questions. So when you go visit your dealer, bring all of the questions, do a test drive, maybe an overnight, write down all your new questions. Just make sure you keep the lines of communication open and ask all the questions that you might have, because as everybody else on this panel has probably noticed, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and there's so much misinformation out there. People have no idea what an EV can even do for them until they actually take the time to have an open conversation and perhaps go for a test drive and see what it's like to be in one of these cars. So in terms of shopping for the EV, ultimately there should not be any difference for a consumer looking at an ICE versus an EV. The shopping experience should be the same as long as they're dealing with a professional. The consumer is probably going to choose EV in the end, in most cases. But look at the
okay.
body, look at the tires, look at the basic stuff, check the condition report, check the history, and after that, after your questions are answered, should be a pretty easy way to move forward.
All right. All right. Okay, Bruce, you're up. Anything else that you see that people should be thinking about for ICE versus EV?
Yeah, sure. The main thing for the people considering use the EV is they have to understand the daily range they need and the charging option available to them. That's the most important things. So I think that's the only thing. If they're if this EV gonna satisfy their daily range use, and they have a house to charging the vehicle. So I see some customer, they are living in an apartment, they don't have charging ports, but they didn't study that customer didn't study how to charging the vehicle a lot. So they're going to the supercharger every day. It's pretty suffering actually. So before
Yeah.
buying EV, you have to knowing that.
Yeah, I tell people one of the very best benefits of owning an EV, right at the top of the list for me, is being able to refuel at home in my usual parking spot. And if you take
Yeah.
that particular advantage away, EVs are still better in many other ways, but that's a big one, and you'd miss it if that was that wasn't available to you. Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Hey, Daryl, what about you? You have some thoughts on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. To add on to what Julian and Bruce said, we know when people come in to look for a car, there's at least 50 questions they should ask. And we will prompt them. If they haven't asked those questions, we will say to them, this is what you need to know. Totally opposite to what you would get looking at an ICE car. People don't want to tell you about the engine because they don't really know. And there is an uncomfortable factor when you lift up the hood. There's no dipstick. There's no serpentine belt to look at. So the things you would normally think you're supposed to look at, you don't know what you're looking at. You really don't. So people have to have a leap of faith that, okay, whatever this is doing, it's doing. And Julian is right. You check the records as the state of health, check the history on the vehicle. And even tires, for example, a good point is it's a big problem. If you know EVs, the number one issue is tires. But it's not just the tires, but it is the type of tire, the construction, and the load capacity, the performance rating. So quite often we see people put on the wrong tire, and you got to know you're dealing with somebody who recognizes what's going to work or not. So getting over the fear by giving the people the questions to look for. It's really weird. You don't normally get that in a dealership where look at this, look at that. And when you get those questions answered, it's very important to get those questions answered. Don't walk away with uncertainty, like Julian and Bruce is saying. And dealers with EVs are not afraid to give that information. So it's a different experience, I would say.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm going to just reach into Jason there to see, I haven't been looking at the Q&A, but are there any, I have some more things I want to talk about with the panel, but is there anything at this point that you want to throw out there at them?
Thanks, Tim. There are three that I'm looking at that we can ask related to repairs and daily or yearly running costs. Leslie asks, what are the annual non-battery related costs? Keeping in mind that some of these costs are similar to ICE vehicles.
I could jump in first if you don't mind, just simply because of the amount of experience I've had in that. With EVs, because it has regenerative braking, you don't use the brakes that often. And you should really service them like annually, if not more, to make sure that they stay free. Because if you do that with a minor maintenance, you don't wear them out. But a lot of people think, oh, the brakes aren't worn out, I won't maintain them. And then one day they seize up because they're not getting used and it gets expensive. The second thing is obviously with tires being as expensive as they are, because they're heavy cars, high torque, you've got to be really sure your alignment is checked regularly, because it'll get expensive if your alignment is on. Alignment can be knocked out of any car. Most people only check it when they replace their tires. With EVs, you want to check that every year to make sure you're getting the most out of your tires that you can. Those are a couple of key things. And of course, the tires themselves, the maintenance and the rotating. Most people never check their air pressure in their car. And it's high part of emissions and fuel wasting is not checking air pressure. People don't like to do it. But it's more expensive in an EV if you don't do it, because those tires are more money. So those are the three things I would say.
Yeah.
Great. Julian, Bruce, anything you'd like to add?
You go ahead,
Yeah.
Bruce.
Yeah, I agree with Darren. The tire is the most important. You gotta check often, and also about the brakes. Sometimes if you are not driving for a week, it's easily to get a rust on the rotors. So I see some case for Tesla sitting there for months, didn't drive. The brake disc was totally rust and need to be replaced. So check the brake, check the tires.
All right. Anything left, Julian?
Yeah, the rest of the stuff's pretty boring and basic stuff. I think you'll see suspension wear on electric vehicles and things like door hinges and windshield washer fluid pumps and the occasional things that fail. But if you're missing the engine and the transmission, you have no belts and starters, and the ignition system and the fuel system doesn't exist, you're going to save a lot on maintenance over the long term. But it still is important, I think, to have a relationship with a technician who's going to check out your car at least once a year and make sure that the recommended stuff is done, so you can have trouble-free driving. But it's certainly less costly and troublesome to maintain than an internal combustion vehicle, for sure.
Yeah, we were chatting, Julian, before the webinar started broadcasting, and you were telling a story about the EV that you decided to beat to death and see what would happen. That's a pretty telling story. You want to share a little bit about that? I thought that was pretty interesting.
Well, I didn't beat it to death. Actually, I did that in 2011 with a Nissan Leaf. We turned one into a little bit of a race car and just really were extremely hard on it. We couldn't kill the Leaf back in the day, but I was at the auction and there was a Model 3 with just a touch under 300,000 K on it. And this was an Uber car. It still had the Uber sticker on it. So I'm just thinking, literally, the doors have been opened and closed on this car so many times. The trunk has been open and closed so many times. It's got to show some serious signs of wear. So we bought this car with a little under 300,000 K. The battery was still at 94% according to Recurrent. So that was really happy, especially given that it had been supercharged at least twice a day, every single day. And we replaced little tidbits. We ended up spending about $1,000 on reconditioning stuff. We did a trunk wiring harness, a seat belt, 2 door check straps, a trunk latch, power seat buttons, and a visor. We do a lot of Tesla sun visors, broken sun visors. and they break for a funny reason. I can tell you why, but it's kind of an internal secret. No, I'm just
Okay.
kidding. Tesla sun visors. If you ever get in a Model 3 or a Model Y and you flip a sun visor down and the mirror's cracked, have you guys ever seen that?
No.
I've had to buy a lot of those things. If people leave the sun visors down in a Tesla and there's a software update in the car, the seats will go all the way up and all the way forward. And if the sun visors are down on a 45, the seat will break the glass in the sun visor.
Wow.
That's my most costly, most consistent repair in Tesla 3s and Ys.
Never heard that
Sun
before.
visors. Yeah,
Never
I
heard
bought
that before.
15
Wow.
of them so far.
Gosh, crazy,
Hmm.
crazy. All right.
Okay,
Jason,
I'll
you got
do,
it one more?
I'll do one more and then we can have Sarah's live question.
All right. Sounds good.
So this is a callback to the comment about replacing a Tesla battery. They say, nice to know the cost of a replacement battery. What companies can actually install that used battery and how much would they charge?
It was that was Julian, right? You're the one that talked about getting them from the recovering them from the wrecking yard.
Yep. Yeah, we found a place in Vancouver that's got a pretty nice price on Model 3 and Y batteries. They've got them in the stock. And we don't do battery installs here, but there's a local shop in Victoria called Rand Automotive that will do them. There's another shop called Deep Cove Auto Service, and they're just a small shop, but they so happen to do Nissan Leaf and other EV battery swaps. And yeah, we found on the West Coast here, there's a number of shops. There's one over in Langley that's quite awesome, Precision Auto. They do tons of battery swaps. And so if you're ever in a position with an EV and you do need to replace the battery, and I think Hyundai charges $60,000 or something for an ionic battery. So maybe a used battery would be a better choice.
Mhm.
And there's no shortage of shops around doing those swaps.
So the moral of that story is that if you are in that situation, you probably will be able to find a good shop somewhere locally, wherever you may be.
It depends on the
Hopefully.
size of the town. EVs certainly proliferate in city centers for sure. So the bigger the city is, the more likely you are going to be able to have access to EV repair and service for sure. But it's coming everywhere now.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Okay, and Sarah, you still have your hand up, so we're going to enable audio for you and you can ask your question now.
You'll have to unmute yourself, Sarah.
Apologies. I was just asking in regards to, other than the Tesla, because for someone like myself, that cost is still quite high, even in the used range. What would you recommend between the Bolt and the Leaf?
You want me to answer that one?
Well, let's go the other way. We don't like to pick sides, but it's a fair question. So let's start with Bruce. I know you're a Tesla guy, so you gotta think outside the box here.
I would go for a Leaf. I
A
would
Leaf?
go for a Leaf.
And why? Why do you say that?
They're starting at the very beginning, like 10 years ago. They have enough technologies on the EVs, and I think, in my opinion, Japanese brand is more reliable, in my opinion.
Okay, okay. And Daryl, what are your thoughts? You have a
Yeah,
preference?
we've dealt with both, but I gotta say it's the Chevy Bolt that's really been the winner for us for the price you pay and what you get. Chevy, as you may or may not know, replaced all their batteries on a recall over the last couple of years. So they restarted the warranty at 0 with a newer, better battery. So it's ridiculously high range, much higher range than the Nissan Leaf. I agree with Bruce that there's a creature comforts which are different. People love the Nissan Leaf seat. They do not necessarily like the Chevy Bolt seat. The Japanese style interior is, I believe, more upscale, the Chevy Bolt. But my Chevy Bolt buyers absolutely love them, and they go everywhere zippy around. So the Bolt gets my vote there.
Yeah, your body may vary, as far as the seats are concerned. Hey, Julian, what do you think? If you had to
It's
pick.
funny. After many, many years in this business, I have stopped. I used to carry everything. I mean, like I had literally 20 different models in stock for a long time. And I've stopped purchasing everything at the wholesale level except for 3s, Ys, bolts, and leafs. And the reason that I carry the bolts and leafs is because a lot of our clients, A, aren't ready for a for a long range EV. They don't want to spend 20, 30, 40,000. They just want something basic. And if they're replacing an average gas hatchback, which is of course a very popular body style in internal combustion, they just want to replace it with a very basic electric hatchback. And the Bolt and the Leaf meet those needs. I usually have them in stock. It used to be that the Leaf was criticized for small batteries, but in 2018, they got a bigger battery, and the 40 kilowatt hour battery on the island here, we don't have 130 kilometer an hour traffic, and nobody drives an hour to get to work here. People drive 10 minutes at 80 kilometers an hour. So we don't need the big batteries. So I'd say the Leaf is a better car, but the Bolt has a bigger battery. So if the bigger battery is the most important thing, you buy a Bolt. And if you want a car that has maybe a little bit nicer materials on the inside, maybe a little nicer sound system, nicer seat for sure, we always hear seats, then the Nissan Leaf is a winner. But the Bolt does have more creature comforts. It had advanced safety features before the Leaf did. It has a cooling system for the battery, which the Leaf still doesn't have. And the Bolt has CarPlay and Android Auto and a few other things that people really like. So it depends what you want. I don't think you can go wrong either way.
Yeah, so if anybody watching this webinar, either now or in the recording, wonders why there's value in going to a used EV specialist, a dealership like one of these guys, you just heard it. I mean, that insight is invaluable. Anyway, I'm not going to hype on that, but I just feel that you just proved the point that going to a dealer such as one of you fellas is the way to go. There's a whole lot of value. I hope we answered the question, Sarah. Yeah, so if we hope we did anyway. Hope we did a good job at that. I think you did. So the other question I had, and this is going to be a little bit of a mishmash because you're all kind of in different markets to some degree, but talk about incentives. What incentives are out there for the purchase of used EVs? I don't know who wants to start that one. Julian, I know that there's something in BC for used EVs that's fairly recent. Is that correct?
Yeah, in 2022, in March, the provincial government moved the provincial tax rate from 7% down to 0 on used electric vehicles from a dealer, and there no tax if you buy privately, which is quite nice actually, because the PST component represents all the tax on a used EV in BC. So there are advantages for sure. The rebates on new are greater than the tax savings on the used, but the used obviously have a much lower entry price, so they're quite appealing on the sticker price.
The other guys, do you know, are there any other provinces that are doing anything to help with the purchase of used EVs? I don't know the answer.
I know in Nova Scotia, we have a partnership with the dealer there. They have a $2,500 on used. And I know Quebec, I don't know if they still have, because I haven't dealt in Quebec, but I know they did have a used rebate. I think they might have recently discontinued it. And unfortunately, Ontario, we're in wasteland. There's zero support at any level at this stage, unless Bruce knows something different.
No, in Ontario, there's nothing. Like 2 or 3 years ago, there's a $1,000 incentive for the used EV under $50,000, but I'm not sure it's continue or not.
Yeah, I
yet.
think that was done by Plug and Drive through
Right.
somebody who was being generous and allowed them to make that offer. But I think you're right. I think that has gone away now. So if you want a deal on a used EV, move to BC, I guess is the answer. Dear, oh dear. I wanted to ask also about because, and Daryl, I'll come to you on this one because I think you and I had a chat some time ago about financing and that EV purchasers have a bit of a challenge with some lending institutions. Is that correct?
It is probably the single biggest issue I see facing EV affordability. We just bought another Lightning 2 days ago, brand new one, and it's 7% financing. The same truck and gas is 1% or 2%, and every time we've seen that on new. Same with used. I've talked to the banks, the major lenders about. They say they're supporting sustainability, but at the end of the day, they're very conservative. But hey, they're private institutions or they're for profit. The reality is because of the uncertainty around the residual value at the end of the term, because EVs haven't been around forever, like gas cars. and they take the risk-free factor, and let's assume it's going to be worth nothing or next to nothing soon. So that accelerated depreciation, number one, makes it more expensive as a monthly payment for an EV buyer, and it really is terrible. I can't blame the private lenders because that's the model that they have. But when you think of, let's even say 4 or 5% on an $80,000 or $70,000 EV, that wipes out any fuel and maintenance savings, unfortunately, and it really isn't right. But that's continues to this day. I've reached out to the various government organizations, everyone I speak to in government. I said, look, address it. Just give people fair financing. This doesn't even need to be a rebate. Just give them fair financing so that you could make the tables even and make it easier for people to get it. Because it's so new, lenders are afraid of it, and even some insurance companies don't know what to do with EVs. So it is one of the problems facing us.
Well, I'm going to jump in with a plug for EV Society because, and I'll put this also in the comment section, is that EV Society does have an insurance, auto and property insurance sponsor. Unfortunately, right now it's still only available to people in Ontario and in some of the Atlantic provinces. But you can get a pretty good quote if you're an EV Society member from the organization. I'll put that link down below. Bruce, is there have you found any sticking points with financing for EVs?
Yes, for Fuel Bank, they offered some special rates for used EV within 2 or 3 years new. But still, there's not too much support from the bank side. I think it probably, but I see there are a few of the leasing company. They're starting to interesting about lease the used EV to the customers who is going to drive for Uber or something else. So yeah, currently there's no support from a bank. Some customer is suffering. Compared to buying a new Tesla. For Tesla, currently they have special offer, but for used Tesla, unfortunately, there's no support from the bank.
Yeah. Julian, you had the same experience?
Well, I have financed internal combustion and electric cars. And there's certainly no difference between the value of financing or the interest rates in financing a used EV versus a used ICE car. So I think the consumers who are looking for a used car would likely pay the same interest rate in any given market as they would shopping for an EV as they would ICE, but in used. But the new car, the OEMs, especially Tesla, are starting to offer quite juicy deals on financing. They're just obviously planning ahead, and they know that over the course of the loan, the mean average interest rate is going to drop quite a bit over the course of the loan. So they're still going to be okay, even if they do a 1.99% or whatever. But
Yeah.
used dealers have always been competing against new dealers to capture those finance customers. So I don't think anything's changed there with EV or not.
Okay. Okay.
In BC anyway, that's what I see.
We've been talking a lot about going out and shopping for a used EV, but what if I've got one and I want to trade it? What's that experience like? What are we looking at there, Bruce? Do you take
Yes.
trade-ins, or do you? I don't know if your model does that, or
Yeah, for trading for your electric vehicles, I think going to the dedicated EV dealer will be better. Um, Yeah, because dedicated EV dealer, they know the market better. They can offer the most reasonable price for the customer. For the dealer, for the Tesla, if you have Tesla, if you want trading to the Tesla to getting a new Tesla, their trading price is not that good because Tesla basically they're not dealership. They don't buy and sell vehicles. They just focusing on sell new cars. So if you have an electric vehicle you want to sell, so selling to the dedicated EV dealer would be the better choice, in my opinion.
okay. Other guys, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the key operative word there is dealer. We deal in and out, and the people that are in the EV space, we do get a lot of requests of people all across the spectrum of what they're looking for. So you have a much better chance if you go to an EV dealer that may have somebody looking for something that you have. It's a lot easier. We always have a waiting list, always of people looking for this or that. they may not be ready to bite until the right car comes along. So us as dealers, when we know that, when you come in, we can make a match. The truth is the car business is a matchmaking service. You know, you don't make a ton of money on every transaction, but if you can help somebody sell a car and buy a car, everybody's happy. And the reality is, when you're in EV, you usually stay in EV. So somewhere down the road, you come back, the car you bought today, which happened to me probably 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Someone who bought a car upgraded to something else. We took it and sold it. So through that whole 15-year life cycle, your dealer has a role to play as matchmaker. So that's the way to go. If you just go to somebody who doesn't know the product, they don't have a buyer, and they don't understand the market. So
You're not going to do as well. No.
right.
Yeah. Hey, and Julian, what do you think? What's your experience with the buying part of it, trading part of it?
Yeah, we love to take trades. I always tell people, sorry, I got the sun blasting in my face here. I always tell people when they buy their car, listen, I want you to take the car today. I want you to bring it into our detail studio on a regular basis to keep it looking amazing. And then when you're done with it, if you're not going to pass it on to your kids or whatever, or a family member, bring the car back to us and trade it in on your next car. So my goal is to buy back every single car that I sell, because it's a lot easier for me to buy back a car that I know and resell it again. Of course, I make a profit on it every time we buy and sell the same vehicle, but the customers love it because they know they can trade in anything with me, EV or otherwise. It's you know, in terms of a business, every car dealer is a relationship builder. And yeah, although we are dealers, but we love to have our clients as well. So I always encourage customers to shop around on a trade. Obviously, you want to go for the best value for trade-in. And you know, as Bruce had mentioned, Tesla's numbers aren't very good, so we can usually beat Tesla's trade-in numbers, and that's very helpful. But at the end of the day, you know, we love to buy used EVs back. It doesn't matter what condition they're in or how many kilometers are on them. We're willing to take back every car that we've ever sold because we're going to find another buyer for it.
No, it's good to know. I know that in my experience, yeah, you could maybe save a few bucks if you sell it privately, but it's a hassle, and you know, I don't really want to have to go through that personally. So I'd be on your doorstep with my next trade-in. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Can I throw something in there? This is
Sure,
an
yeah.
interesting little story that I learned in the EV business, because everybody starts off with the same question. When they're a new client, they come in for the first time and say, oh, how much is the new battery? When am I going to have to replace the battery in this car? And my standard line after about 10 years of selling used EVs is that we don't change the batteries, we change the driver.
I love it.
So if you have a 15-year-old Leaf or a 10-year-old Leaf with 250,000 K, you're not going to go spend $10,000 on a battery, because for a smaller difference, you can trade in your car for $5,000 and spend a little more and get a more modern car that's got more modern safety features and better styling and better seats and better this and better that. So in a lot of cases, it's like, well, you don't need to replace the battery in this old car. Just get a newer car. I'll give you a fair trade-in value. You get a newer car that's got more warranty and all these extra features. We just replace the driver, not the battery.
Yeah, good advice. Good
And that's how the
advice.
trade-ins work for us.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Jason, we have another question. Bob, is it?
Yeah, Bob has his hand up. So if we take that question from Bob, and then I'll read out 2 or 3 of the other questions, and that should take us just about to time, I think.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Bob, you can unmute and go ahead.
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Bob Porter. I'm with the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association. One thing I think you guys should mention, because we see a lot of US models coming up. There's a few dealerships in Vancouver buying by the truckload. They're coming up from California, and in the US, as you may have noticed, a lot of them come as 350 or 450 add-on to have fast charging. And we've seen a few of those Leafs, and actually there was somebody in the Bolt Club was trying to figure out how to charge his car at a fast charger, only to find out he doesn't have CCS. So I think it's one thing people have to look out for, is the fact that some of these cars coming up don't have fast charging. It's been a shock for one of our members that bought a Leaf that didn't have CHAdeMO. And now I see somebody in the Bolt Club had pictures and want to know, how do I plug this thing in? It doesn't seem to want to work. So I think it's something we have to watch out for from the US market cars.
Ouch.
Thanks.
Ouch.
That's Well, I wouldn't say ouch to that. I would say, how is it possible that a person bought a car without knowing if it had fast charger or not? They did, like, where was the salesperson during that process? And I've sold hundreds of cars with no DC fast charge. Hundreds.
Yeah.
So people
Sounds
just
like,
don't look.
yeah.
Well, you need to
Well,
ask the questions. Like, if you're going to spend $20,000 or $30,000 on something, you should know what you're buying, and that's when the conversation with your salesperson comes in. Listen, what do I need to know? Okay, I'll tell you all about it.
Maybe it
And that
was a
comes down to the
private,
use case too.
maybe it was a private purchase.
No,
Maybe.
actually, it was through a dealership in Vancouver who sells a lot of electric cars. I won't mention the dealership, but
The
they missed it.
salesperson might not have had a clue, right? So
When they bought it in the States at auction, they obviously missed it because even one of our board members missed it because they went out with them to buy the car. And it wasn't until they actually opened the charge port door that on the bolt on the Leaf that they realized it didn't have fast charging. Thanks.
yeah, that was
Thanks.
an option in Canada and the US for a long time. Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. That's a good question. I was totally unaware. It's a great one. All right, Jason.
Okay, Bob stole one of my questions. I didn't realize that it was from him in text as well. Back to batteries. This is one that I think it may have been Daryl that mentioned it. How long do EV batteries typically last in light of all of the disinformation out there? Like, it comes up over and over and over again.
Sure. Well, I was in Halifax a couple of weeks ago with probably one of the premier battery engineers in the world out of Dartmouth, and he got up and he showed on the charts the amount of average degradation over a period of time. And a couple of key things made some difference, like if you're exclusively fast charging and exclusive high temperature, but it was still a minor degradation. You're talking 2.5, 3 max percent. It was so for the good batteries that last, which a lot of them are there, it's really negligible. Just like Julian said, you're changing the drivers before you're changing the battery. And we've seen cases with batteries fail, but the good news is they fail early, usually when they're under warranty. So there isn't a worry there. You get to the dealer. Now, there is one, I'll be honest, there is some problems because when it's under warranty, you're in the dealer's hands to handle that warranty. And there's a big gap between the manufacturer. When Tesla has a problem, they take care of you right away. You're in a new battery fast. Other manufacturers, and if you want to know, talk to the dealers that know, that will make you wait months and months to deal with the problem. So you got to probably factor it in, but the warranty's there. It really is not an issue.
Okay, thank you. This is one that I've heard lots of anecdotal horror stories about, but not a lot of hard data. Regarding EVs with rebuilt status, is there anything to watch for in terms of features being disabled after they're written off, like over-the-air updates or charging speeds?
Can I
Julian,
field that one?
It looks like you want that one.
You know what? I bought a couple Teslas with rebuilt status years ago. Just took one of them back in on trade, actually. So I learned up front by talking with Tesla ahead of time, before I made the first purchase, that they're going to cancel supercharging access. So if you buy a rebuilt Tesla, and I can't say the same for everybody else because nobody else has their own native charging network. So they don't have access or control to how these cars plug in and charge, but Tesla does. So if you buy a rebuilt Tesla, you're not going to supercharge at a Tesla supercharger. You can still DC fast charge, but you have to go to a third party to handle that. You're not going to do it at a Tesla supercharger. And they're also going to cancel the warranty. And if you buy a rebuilt Tesla, rebuilt status Tesla, and it still has supercharging and warranty, don't worry. It might take them 6 or 8 months, but they will turn it off. The other thing is, if you buy a, well, this isn't specific to rebuild, but if you buy a Tesla from Tesla and it has FSD on it, a used one, and the previous owner traded the car in with FSD with the intention of moving FSD over to another car, Tesla might remove FSD, but it could take 6 or 8 months for them to get around it. So I've seen FSD disappear, but only on used cars that Tesla bought and resold.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, actually, we're really getting close to the end. Jason, do you have a nice juicy question for Bruce, and then we'll do a wrap?
I don't know. Let's see, Bruce.
If not, I can just, we can let Bruce have the final say and ask if he has any insight or buying tips, special buying tips that he would tell shoppers if they're out there looking for a used EV. What would
Yeah,
you,
let's
what would
go
you
for
tell
that,
them?
Bruce.
Yeah, sure. For the tips, okay. So first thing, I think the people need to care about the warranties. So if the car coming with the warranties, that's really important to protect to save the money in the future. The second thing is you got to know your daily range needs and what kind of the battery size you need. You probably just need the standard range. You don't have to be you doesn't need the long range. So choose and knowing your charging options available to you. Um, the last, I strongly recommend buying from a dedicated EV dealer. So they got you for your first pre-owned EV because they know everything you want to know. You can ask all the questions. Some of my, I know some people buying from, for example, buying from a used Tesla from a Mercedes dealer. So they cannot answer all the questions. So trying to figure out all the questions you have, ask people who has a EV or go to the dedicated EV dealer to ask them all the questions you have for your
Wonderful.
first.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen,
Can I
guys.
just add,
Yeah,
can
go
I
ahead.
add 10 seconds to that comment?
If it's quick.
I think Bruce did a great job. People should reach out to EV drivers like EV Society. Reach out to EV Society. Talk to the drivers who have no skin in the game. Talk to somebody who drives an EV. You'll feel a lot better. So that's a big part of buying it. Talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about and avoid the FUD that Julian mentioned earlier.
Yeah, if anybody is contemplating, and it's not just people in the audience, if you know someone who's thinking about buying an EV, a used EV, or even a new one, have them reach out to EV Society. We'll put them in touch with a real owner of that particular car, and you can talk to them, and they'll tell you, give you the unvarnished truth about their experience with the car, and they've got nothing to win or lose in it. So I think you can really trust what an actual owner has to say. And again, there'll be a link in the comments under the recording, so you can reach us through there. And on that note, we're out of time. I got to thank you all again. You're kind of competitors in a way, although you're kind of in different markets. But it shows you're great people to come on and do this, share your expertise. Really, really appreciate it. It's wonderful of you to do that. So thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right, so I'm going to talk about next month, just as we close off on Canada Talks Electric Cars. We're going to be welcoming two great people, Richard Ivedy and his partner, Nicole Menzies. While you may have heard over the years about various pretty interesting EV adventures and trips and so on, you'll definitely want to hear about their Great Canadian EV Road Trip. For nearly 2 years now, while living in an electric truck, they've been traveling across Canada. They've gone right across Canada one way, turned around, and gone all the way as far east and then as far west. And actually, I think they're heading into Alaska right now. So they're going to talk to us about that. And you can just imagine some of the adventures that they've probably had during that interval. So we're looking forward to hearing from Richard and Nicole. Remember to mark the date. That's going to be on Tuesday, November 5th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So on behalf of all of us at EV Society, thanks a lot for joining today's webinar.